And welcome back to the Wells Fargo Center, where later today, day one of the Democratic National Convention will get underway. However, we have already seen this week embroiled in controversy, and we saw that controversy come to a very acute head just moments ago. We're going to turn around the video and the sound for you to hear in just a bit, but we saw DNC Chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz step to a microphone to address members of the Florida delegation here. It was really expected to be a boilerplate appearance, but it could not be so, not given the last 24 hours, which saw the chairwoman resign her post effective at convention's end in the aftermath of a DNC leak, which seemed to reveal that the DNC had, in fact, conspired to favor the campaign of Hillary Clinton over that of Bernie Sanders. Perhaps speaking to what we just saw at that delegation appearance by Wasserman Schultz. To discuss it all, we have our esteemed CBSN panel. We start with CBSN political contributor, Democratic strategist, founding partner of 270 Strategies, Linda Tran. Linda, also the communications director for Tim Kaine during his time as governor, an expert on all things here this week. Next to her, Democratic strategist Liz Smith, and last but certainly not least, Leslie Sanchez, a CBSN political contributor and Republican strategist. So let's start, Linda, with you. There's been a lot of discussion just in the last 12 hours or so as Debbie Wasserman Schultz has remained officially on the schedule to gavel in proceedings today and then deliver remarks. It was thought that could be a risk, although it had been discussed in terms of potential. But given what we just saw, is there any way that this party and that the campaign can afford to let her step to a microphone here tonight?
I think that they're in a really tough position because they essentially have to at this point. They went out very publicly yesterday saying that she's going to be gaveling in, gaveling out, as you said, delivering remarks, which should have been a pretty straightforward presentation this morning. Clearly has been an opportunity for especially Bernie Sanders supporters to really be in her face and vocalize their upset feeling about her being in the place that she's in. Yesterday, we also heard that there were 1,000 Bernie Sanders protesters marching towards Convention Center, and we've started to hear whisperings that there may be other disruptions plotted throughout the course of this week. And so I think this might be only the beginning.
You know, Liz, it would seem that the Democrats could be looking to repeat a history just days old. We saw what happened day one of the GOP convention, the contested floor, the floor fight with regard to Cruz delegates. We saw how that ended for Ted Cruz 2 days later last week. What are your thoughts here?
Well, let's be clear. This was her home state delegation. And imagine what is going to happen when she sets foot on the floor here today. Look, I think it's a disaster. And I think that you know, clearly they're trying to give her some sort of concession for stepping down to let her, you know, give her the opportunity to gavel in the convention. But I think it's going to be a big mistake. And I think we'll see a repeat of what we saw at the Florida breakfast this morning. And, you know, a repeat maybe of what we saw at the Republican convention.
Leslie, it was those were moments at the Republican convention you watched right alongside all of us here. What to make of history then repeating itself?
You know, there's always this amount of disillusion that candidates have. They think that they can go into their state party delegation, and that those are the most loyal supporters, and really kind of give their, you know, give them the benefit of the doubt, receive the benefit of the doubt, and tell a different type of story. They try to weave that together. It did not work for Senator Ted Cruz. He went in there, he was booed. It was a hostile takeover, so to speak, of the delegation because they felt he was not loyal to the party. In this case, the similarities are you have so many delegates and party leaders that feel that they were not loyal to the process. So they're going to get this kind of populist, you know, uprising. And it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. People want a fair system, and they want loyalty to some degree.
Now, Linda, this is a four-day event that is to be highly choreographed. This is an effort to create a narrative, to tell a story, especially, again, about a candidate that many in America feel they already know, for better or for worse. This is the sort, it would seem, of self-inflicted wound that not only can they not afford, but they certainly can avoid. Again, what if nothing else then are the optics for Hillary Clinton at this point? She told our Scott Pelley in an interview on Saturday, just as this broke, that she knew nothing of the hack in question, and that she certainly did not support the beliefs of the emails that Scott read to her. But this is also a candidate who has major issues with regard to honesty and trustworthiness. And again, the optics here are not good.
The optics are not good, and you're exactly right. Part of the purpose of having the convention is to tell this broader story, to make the American people feel like they know their nominee or they know the Democratic nominee a lot better. And the visual of having people protesting and waving these signs about emails, even though Hillary Clinton herself is not in the room, is not great. That said, I don't think at the end of the day that everyday voters actually care so much about the inner workings of the party or what happened with the DNC chair. They do fundamentally care about the issues that are in front of them, and they care about what the candidate is saying they're going to do to solve those problems that are in their everyday lives.
And yet, on the other hand, Liz, discussion of this has swallowed the 24 hours heading into tonight. There was a disconnect, and frankly, we heard that from a lot of Republican strategists saying, look, they don't care about charges of plagiarism with regard to Melania Trump's speech. Look, they don't really care that Cruz delegates aren't happy. But Liz, this has dominated discussion here.
Yes, and I completely agree with Linda on one hand, which is that, is this an insider discussion? Yes. But will that clip be played on the evening news everywhere? Mm-hmm. Yes. So it goes beyond just being about insider politics and, inter-party politics. And I think, it's probably too late to unring the bell. And I think she's probably locked in here. But it is problematic for the Democratic Party. Although this is the good thing, is that it's a learning experience. And hopefully we can learn from her disastrous tenure as the chair and have someone who's a little bit more competent and a little bit more willing to, not tip the scales in one candidate's favor in the future.
So, Leslie, we look at the speakers lined up tonight, just in the 10 o'clock hour alone, when national networks will take the proceedings. Senator Cory Booker on that shortest of short lists for VP. Senator Elizabeth Warren. Something of a lightning rod throughout, but certainly a big name. The First Lady, Michelle Obama, slated to speak. And now Senator Bernie Sanders, who had been slated to speak in the 9 o'clock hour, has been moved after all of them. Can sheer star power overcome what might otherwise be the dominant theme after a day one here?
It's really hard to unpack all of that and unravel the work that's been done. The theme throughout is that it is a rigged system. There is no tolerance on either side for that kind of overt bias one way or the other. That's going to be the challenge. So even though Bernie Sanders, the interesting part will be he comes forward and he says we have to do anything to ensure we don't elect Donald Trump, but you still have a good portion of his supporters who have yet to buy that message, and now this just adds fuel to the fire.
Go ahead.
Well, this is what I'd say is, polls show 85%, 90% of Bernie supporters are supporting Hillary Clinton. But the 10% that aren't are the loudest ones. And I think that's what will be the problem here.
Some polls do. Some other polls say that 57% of Bernie Sanders supporters, that they are going all over the Green Party to Libertarians, 5% maybe going to Donald Trump.
Yeah, with the Libertarians, yeah.
So what role, too, Leslie, does, as the GOP convention played out last week, Democrats and certainly the presumptive nominee who will become the official nominee, largely silent. They let it play out. Hillary Clinton told our Scott Pelley in an interview, look, I'm not going to call him anything. I'm not going to respond when he calls me Crooked Hillary. I don't choose to engage in that sort of discourse. We have already seen the GOP's nominee become a social media provocateur. He seems to be tweeting by the minute right now, looking to drive this wedge between Sanders supporters and those in the Clinton camp. It definitely, if nothing else, adds a level of intrigue and interest to what we're going to see.
Why it is so compelling, and what is really what we want to watch. It's very, very rarely do you get a real convention bounce. People talk about, is there something that happens? Because you have several tens of millions of people watching this narrative play out on national television. It's the only time people start to tune in. But only in 92 with Clinton, and 88 with George H.W. Bush, and even going back to 68 with Nixon, did you see a bounce actually turn the course of the election election, and they ran it all the way to November. That's what Trump's trying to do. He's trying to turn this fiasco into his opportunity. He's beating on this consistently, and it may turn the tide. For these voters, particularly the wedge in the Democratic Party, is the people that feel it was a rigged system. And in many ways, our coalition on the Republican side was not connected until until Cruz imploded. That was what the unifying factor was. So this is a really similar kind of dynamic playing out.
And typically what happens after the convention, when we talk about the convention balance, is you get it for a little while, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then other events take over and kind of stamp it out. In 2012, it was pretty brilliant, right? In 2008, when Sarah Palin was announced as the vice presidential pick, that completely...
It goes up and then down.
Well, exactly. So, and because the conventions were back-to-back this cycle, you would have anticipated that whatever bump Trump got after the RNC, it would diminish actually pretty quickly. But given that the narrative for the last 24 hours has been this, I would expect it lasts maybe a little bit longer. Yeah,
but, I think once President Obama goes out and speaks, this will all be erased. And I think we will obsess over this over the next few days. And, of course, I'm calling it a disaster, but I think it will be short-lived. And I think in the long run, I think she made a great pick with Tim Kaine. And I think that our convention will be a lot better organized, a lot more energized than the Republican one.
Bringing it back.
Of course, it could start with, as we just saw, a whole lot of booze as the gavel first strikes.
It looked like a scene from Game of Thrones with Cersei Lannister.
Yeah.
Shame,
Yeah.
shame, shame.
I mean, one could argue that that's not a good look for a party as its convention gets underway.
Right.
That's a lot of energy, though. We can all agree.
Not the kind of energy we're looking for.
Energetic
You
moment.
weren't specific.
And an energetic segment. Ladies, thank you all.
Thank you.